Hi, I'm Rick Tibbetts. Welcome to Unlimit Yourself. I'm glad you're here. In today's episode, also known as the second installment of Unlimit Yourself's Power of Passion series, we'll be exploring the story of Erik Sargent, a master of media arts who literally has a master's in media arts. Among his many titles, Erik is an audio engineer, music composer, sound and graphic designer, drummer, Legend of Zelda superfan, and a video game aficionado. He is also a Twitch streamer who creates captivating and hilarious content under his own personal brand, SargeGames. Leveraging the triforce of courage, skill, and passion, Erik summoned the power to overcome self-doubt and go public with his unique voice and content style. Watching him be so open with his creativity and unreservedly himself helped motivate me to do the same. It's for that reason that I knew Erik would be a fantastic addition to this show. So without further ado, let us go boldly forth and unveil the legend of SargeGames. Hey Erik, welcome to Unlimit Yourself.
Thanks for having me here, Ricky.
Well, it is so good to finally have you on the show. I wanted to have you as a guest since around the time I started Unlimit Yourself, because you exemplify passion, dedication, and a commitment to quality in all that you do. You're really a jack of all trades when it comes to media production, and as a spirited media guy myself, I've really enjoyed watching you fully own your passion, develop your own brand, SargeGames, and produce highly entertaining content in your own style. It's all very inspiring, and I look forward to digging into it in this episode.
I'm flattered. I don't know what to say.
Well, then I'll say it for you. Let's begin with our alma mater, Syracuse University. We both attended that fine institution, specifically its Newhouse School of Public Communications. I received a bachelor's in public relations from Newhouse, but you went on to get both a bachelor's and a master's degree at Newhouse. But which programs did you choose and why?
I got my bachelor's in television, radio, and film, and then I got my master's in audio arts or audio engineering. And the reason why is because, like I said, I kind of figured Newhouse was the avenue for me to take, given I liked media production. And so I started doing TV, radio, and film, and I made like a lot of short films, and I learned how to screenwrite, and which I'm still not that good at. And I learned cinematography and lighting and all that. And one thing that was always really lacking was audio, like audio in student projects and films. I'm sure you've heard it before on different projects, but
Yep.
audio, like even if the video looks really, really great and color graded nicely, the audio sounds like someone recorded it off their phone in the bathroom.
Yep.
So
And sometimes they did.
sometimes they did. They thought that was overdubbing it, but basically I was like, damn, I really want the audio to sound good on this. Otherwise, it's not going to feel like a good finished product. I was on the first short film that I produced. I was the sound guy. I was the sound engineer and the editor. And I kept insisting on each scene. I'm like, can we get the audio right? Can you guys let me check the levels and make sure that the microphones are working properly first? And they didn't want to, and they wanted to keep moving and moving. Go figure, the one scene I was able to actually prepare for sounds really good. And then the rest of the scenes, they sound half-assed. So that was part of the reason why I continued to get my master's in audio arts, because I started to grow more of an affinity for audio for like the other half of the experience, because they say sound is, half of the experience or more. And so I was like, okay, I'm kind of interested in audio. I ended up going to the studio in Newhouse a few times for different classes, and I fell in love with being in the studio. And I was like, this is just so cool that I can record something on microphones in the studio and it sounds great. Why don't our films sound like this? And that's kind of what bridged the gap between doing TV, radio, and film in undergrad, and then moving on to audio arts for my master's.
Wow. It's quite the journey that you had, and clearly your direction in life, your internal compass pointed you in the direction of high fidelity audio and video, and
It definitely did. Yeah, I guess it must have been an internal voice, kind of like sometimes what you do, what you truly enjoy doing when you're younger or when you're a kid and you're really passionate. Sometimes I think that ends up being what you want to do. And that was me as a kid. Was I had iMovie on my like original iPhone 4, And well, I wasn't a kid back then, but yeah, I had iMovie and I would create little videos and stuff. I'd create music on GarageBand, and I think that was kind of like at the core essence of what I wanted to do. And so that's kind of why I was like, okay, out of all the places at SU, Newhouse would probably be the avenue for me to express that media production desire I have.
Well, that's so interesting that you say that because that mirrors my story as well. But that's why I'm so excited to have you here because you're one of the very few people who actually have the gall to put yourself out there publicly and to be, as I put it on this show, confidently vulnerable.
It took gall. It really did. I don't
Yeah,
even know how I do. I don't even know how I do it.
right. I couldn't believe it either. It was something that very much inspired me to get on the horse and start making my own original content. And of course, I'm talking about SargeGames. You pioneered your own brand on Twitch, and you did so with thematic consistency and a regular cadence of content. You developed your own fan base for it, and you made sure that everything you created was highly curated and thoughtfully produced. So, my question to you is, what inspired you to create SargeGames, and did you always want to be an original content creator?
Ooh, I didn't know that I always wanted to be a content creator in that way. I guess I kind of watched YouTubers and thought, hey, it'd be pretty cool if I was like this. But in terms of streaming, I think is I gotta shout out my best friend Jason. He kept like suggesting to me that I should stream or just coming up with the idea of streaming. And so I just went live on Twitch once. I played a little Breath of the Wild and I was like, this is kind of cool. But it does take gall. Like I had to force myself to do it. And eventually you just kind of become more confident in yourself and being able to kind of like put yourself out there and put your face up there, and then when you develop a community of really great viewers that you engage with and they love it, then you know that you're doing something right.
Yeah, well, I definitely know what that process is like when in the beginning you feel this trepidation, this apprehension about going public with something that you really love and being vulnerable creatively with the world and showing people the real you, the most authentic layer of who you
Exactly.
are. And that's exactly what I get when I watch your Sarge Game streams on Twitch. And for anybody who may not use Twitch, it is a streaming platform and it largely focuses on video gameplay. And so I'm sure, Eric, you could explain it better. Uh,
Oh,
but,
I couldn't explain it better because you explained it fine.
well,
And there's more
fantastic.
to it than just gameplay too. I mean, some people do actually a lot of different channels. I mean, some people have like cooking channels on there. Some people just do ASMR. Some people do just chatting. So there's a lot on there.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what's so exciting about this day and age of media is because you can be a content creator of virtually anything. I mean, anything goes with content nowadays. And you just so happen to be going down a fairly well-worn path of video game content creators, which I've watched myself. I've watched many different gameplay videos and walkthroughs and video game commentary and theories. And you do so in exactly the fashion of the most professional YouTubers and Twitch streamers that I've seen.
Oh,
And
I appreciate that.
yeah, no, like I said at the beginning, you really put so much time and effort into quality. And that has always been a sticking point for me. I've collaborated with many different people, both academically for media projects, and back in the old days when I was making videos and audio with friends. And I was just such a stickler for quality. I wanted to make everything that I produced as close to perfect as I could get it given my time frame and resources. So when I come across other creators who feel the same way,
Oh
I
yeah.
get all excited.
That was definitely me. That was definitely me during my bachelor's, and it was the reason I got my master's.
Right, right. No, that makes total sense. And since we're on the topic of our creative foundations, tell me a little bit about when you were younger. What were you making in terms of content, and what was that experience like? How joyful was that for you?
Oh, geez, you're gonna love this, but I once made a day in the life of Link video where I dressed up and I had a Link costume
Uh-huh.
and I dressed up in that. And then I just filmed all these different scenes about what I would imagine Link's daily life would be like, but if he were not living, in Hyrule, if he were living in our world. And I had a scene where I was like making coffee at the coffee pot, and instead of grabbing like the ingredients, like the coffee and the creamer and stuff out of the cupboard, I was grabbing them all from like my satchel on my back. And I was making a joke about how Link can like he has unlimited space in that tiny little satchel.
Oh, yes, he does.
So
Yes.
like that's an example of something that's kind of cheesy and cringy, like looking back, but it's also that was like one of the early signs that I was meant to be in media production. And that's just
Wow.
one of them. Then
Yeah.
there was one I did with Legos. I had a Lego set, like a Lego police station, and I made this whole little, almost like a when you see those stop motion Lego videos people make on YouTube. But since
Hmm.
I couldn't do stop motion at the time, I just attached little strips of clear tape to the Lego people and made them move around the Lego set.
Wow. I don't know how many people understand the amount of attention to detail that you have to have when you're doing these little projects. Like you really have to be very precise with your shots and with your editing.
Hmm.
And when you're younger, you think that it came out flawlessly. I mean, you're just like,
Yes, that
oh
is
my
very
god,
true.
it's incredible. And you really like you would. This was what I would do. I would go and brag to my friends and be like, "Look what I created! It's so incredible! I made this music video." And then looking back years later, I'm like, oh, you know what? The editing is really rudimentary here. Actually, it's
Yeah.
it's not actually
you're,
that
you're proud of
impressive.
it and you're proud of it in the moment, and then you look back and realize that they were probably judging what you made against the standards of everything else that they were watching or listening to.
Yes, exactly. I mean, hey, you live, you learn, you grow, and you certainly have. And as you grew, your passion for that first project you brought up, the subject matter of it, Zelda, that has, I think, just flourished. And so I wanted to dive into that. For all of my dear listeners, Erik and I, we love Zelda, but it is abundantly clear that he is a much bigger fan and far more knowledgeable than I'll
Oh
ever
no.
be when it comes to Zelda. So I really, I would love to know, when did you discover Zelda, and at what point did you become enthralled with it both personally and professionally?
Geez, there are people who are way bigger fans than I am, but I'm definitely a big fan.
Yeah.
Uh it's just such a wide spectrum. But I would say when I was a kid, I started playing Ocarina of Time on my grandmother's N64. That's when I got started. And
Mm.
Ocarina of Time kind of like set the bar for what a game should be to me. And ever since then, I've just always, it, if a game is below a certain bar, I kind of just drop it. Not that every game has to be perfect, but I don't know. Ocarina of Time spoiled me a little bit.
Oh, I think it spoiled all of us. Whenever I would go over a friend's house and we'd start playing video games, they'd have like Gears of War, Modern Warfare, and those are fun. Those are fun. And I'm not saying they're bad games at all because they are highly rated
Yeah, yeah.
in their own ways. But the story behind Zelda, the music, the smoothness of the gameplay, I mean, all of that put together thrusts you into the game, captivates you the entire time, and makes you feel personally invested in every scene. I
Hmm.
mean, if you're playing, let's say, Nazi zombies in Black Ops in Modern Warfare, you're having a good time, and I certainly did. I really liked Nazi zombies, but you don't feel necessarily intertwined with the character, with the gameplay. You feel very much separate from it. Whereas when I play Zelda, I feel like I am the warrior. I feel like I am Link, like I actually am saving something because the
Yeah, no, that's true.
storytelling, it's just it captivates you in such a way where you feel emotionally invested.
Nazi zombies, it accomplishes what it sets out to do, which is fine. And Zelda accomplishes what it sets out to do. And part of that is really making you feel like you're a Link. And I don't mean to sound like all the reviewers talking about, oh, it really makes you feel like Spider-Man, that whole meme. But it
Yeah.
really it really makes you feel like Link. Like Hyrule really depends on you and it's on your shoulders. It's not just a game.
Yes, and it even transitioned the gameplay. It transitioned into my real life when I was younger, even into my early teens. Like whenever I was just outside playing around outside, I would imagine that I was Link, the main character. For anybody who's
I did the
listening,
same thing.
and yeah, for anyone listening and doesn't know who the main character is, it's Link, and he's the guy in green with the pointy
It's
hat.
not Zelda, okay? It
It's
is
not
not
Zelda. It is not Zelda. Is the princess that he always tries to save. Link is the warrior. And so I would be running around playgrounds or just running around the grass in someone's yard, my own or a friend's, and act like I was adventuring around Hyrule, saving the day. So I feel like you must have had that experience.
I 100% did. At the same grandmother's house that I played Ocarina of Time at, and I'm not saying I only played Ocarina of Time, okay, guys, I had a bunch of N64 games, but they had a whole like huge woods up in the back, and I built like a whole arsenal of Zelda items and swords and stuff. And then I would
Wow.
just run up there and I would like pretend I was in dungeons and kind of like make up puzzles as I went and just like slash some plants and no rupees though.
Oh, you didn't slash
If
grass
I
and rupees came out?
I wish if they did, then maybe I could have paid off my student loans by now.
Oh, man. See, Zelda didn't think about that. They should have added a real world component.
Yes.
Well, yes, but good that you mention N64 because I grew up with that very same console and it was pivotal to my development as a kid because, well, a lot of others were playing the DS and I played the DS. Of course, I
Mhm.
played it quite a lot, but I was fortunate because I grew up with older siblings and they were quite older. My oldest is about 10 years older than me.
Oh,
And yeah, so I'm the youngest. And so I grew up with a lot of the millennial consoles. And the N64, I had Ocarina of Time, I had Majora's Mask, which, yeah, if I'm being honest, when I was a kid, Majora's Mask was the one that I just loved. But that's also because I don't think we had Ocarina of Time until I was, I think, maybe 12 or 13 or
oh, Majora's Mask is brilliant. It's like one of those rare sequels done right, where
oh,
like it like as perfect as Ocarina of Time is. Majora's Mask just builds on all of it. It just takes it to another level.
it really does. And I've always wondered how did those game developers get into that state of mind to create such weird and sinister scenes and gameplay? I just it's really
Majora's Mask is like an impressive case study in how they like the Zelda team did the game. They made the game in like a year. Ocarina of
they
Time
made it
came
really
out in
fast.
'98. Majora's Mask came out in 2000. They built it on the same engine, but they made a really brilliant game on the same engine, but in like I think a year or a little over a year.
Yeah.
Kind of ridiculous.
Oh
The
my
whole 3 day
goodness.
cycle idea and the moon crashing into Termina, all of that, and they just came up with that in a year.
Wow. So, with Zelda as one of your primary creative foundations, was your goal or is your goal to end up working for a video game company in some capacity?
In some capacity, it'd be really nice. I know at one point, like in high school and kind of like going into college, I was really like gung ho Nintendo. I want to work at Nintendo. Nintendo's going to be so great and all that. But now I'm older and I realize that all companies have their pros and cons, and working at Nintendo would be cool, I guess, if I was in the right position or I had the right role. But in the end, I think anything video game related would be really cool because you know, as a player, it'd be kind of cool to be on the other side of things on the production side. So like, if I were to accept like a dream job right now, one possible dream job would be composing the soundtrack for a video game.
Well, that would be very ideal because you are very well versed in audio mastering, audio design, voice acting, and creating your own scenes from movies and other short films. And actually, I watched your redubbed scenes from the movie Baby Driver and Zelda Breath of the Wild,
Oh
as
yeah.
well, yeah, as well as your rescore of the music video for Stylo by the Gorillaz, the band.
Oh, I'm glad you. I appreciate you watched that.
Yeah, no, they were all phenomenal. Like I was blown away by how smooth and creative and sleekly produced each and every composition was, and they sounded like they came out of a professional movie studio.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that because it's hard to judge your own work sometimes.
Oh yeah, especially with creative work, you're in the editing suite and you're like, okay, so I placed the audio track, so I know when it starts and stops, and I know how I edited it, so you can hear maybe, oh, maybe there's a flaw here, or it's not as crisp here. But I'm telling you, man, when I listened to all of them, when I watched those clips, it was it was like I was just watching the movie, but with different voices and a little bit different music. So, what is the scheduling, recording, and editing process like for projects like that?
I mean, I'd say Breath of the Wild Redubbed was the most official project, so to speak, where I came up with the idea in Newhouse senior year for my senior capstone in my advanced audio class. Shout out to Professor McDougall in Newhouse. He's amazing. And so I was like, okay, I kind of want to I got to rebuild something from the ground up in terms of like score and voiceover and all that and sound effects. And I decided on some of the Breath of the Wild cutscenes. So I came up with the idea of Breath of the Wild redubbed, where I basically was able to find voiceover students in Newhouse who were willing to do the voices for the cutscenes. And Professor McDougall, my audio professor, he's like, okay, I can. How about you go talk to Professor Perkins in Newhouse? She has an art of the voiceover class, and you could walk in and just tell them what your project is and see if anyone's interested. So I did exactly that. I walked into her class. I immediately like fell in love with her class. I ended up like going to her class for like 2 years with, even though I wasn't enrolled in it. I ended up being her teaching assistant.
Wow.
And yeah, basically I gave a keynote to the class saying, here's what I'm doing, Breath of the Wild redubbed. I need this character, I need that character. I need Daruk, the Goron, well, former Goron chief who's like really gruff and, but kind of silly. And I need Mifa, who's the Zora girl, and she's really soft spoken and all that. And then people did auditions. I was in the sound booth and I judged their performances and thought, most of them right away, I was like, okay, she's Mifa. Okay, he's Daruk. I just knew right away. So that's what that was like. And then anybody in Newhouse could schedule time to be in the studios. And I was eventually a studio engineer at Newhouse, and I kind of helped with the calendar a lot. So I would just schedule people for when they were available, and we'd go into the studio, and I would make sure everything was set up ahead of time in the vocal booth, and I would work the board, and we would record, and we would just go line by line. And I kind of had the cutscenes memorized at that point, so I kind of knew what intonation I wanted, what the tone of each line. Should it end with like a what inflection? Should it end like a question or this or that? And that's kind of more or less the process of recording it.
Yeah, I mean, it's so fascinating because even me, I didn't really know about the field of audio engineering or sound design. But after viewing your work, it was really inspiring and captivating and exciting because this is a whole field that I also have immense interest in, but I don't have as many skills as you. But before I go on, I want to take a quick timeout here for anybody who does not play Zelda or who does not know anything about the Zelda franchise. Breath of the Wild, what we keep referring to, is the most recent game in the Zelda series that you play on the Nintendo Switch. And in both my and Eric's opinion, it is a true masterpiece. But anyway, when you were doing this project with the Breath of the Wild redub, how long did that take you to do for all of the scenes that you chose? And also, how did you get those scenes from the video game onto your computer?
I mean, it took a couple months, and I still never finished it the first time. I just recently finished Breath of the Wild redubbed. Well, finished the cutscenes that I had a couple months ago, but I'm still open to doing a few more of them. I just need to cast people.
Yeah.
And I would say, well, first of all, to get the cutscenes, I have an Elgato capture card that I use to capture gameplay footage for SargeGames, and that's the reason I bought it. Actually, was not SargeGames. It was 4 years ago, and I was like, okay, I want to capture these cutscenes so I could have them at full quality, and I know that I'm the one who captured them. So I got the capture card, connected it to my Switch, and I just went through all the cutscenes, and I had my capture card recording, and then I would play the cutscene and just let it play out, and then that's kind of how I got them all. So when you watch Breath of the Wild redubbed, you could say that everything was produced by me. like the footage I took from my Switch on my game file on Breath of the Wild, and then the sound effects I put in there. The music is the only thing that I left untouched because to fully rescore the cutscenes would have been a daunting task, and maybe I could have done it if I had more time. But I kind of Zelda music, I don't know that I wanted to touch it. Like I don't know that I wanted to try to replace that.
Yeah, that is a delicate task to go about rescoring Zelda, because we know as fans that every scene of Zelda, going back all the way to Ocarina of Time, every scene, the composers of the video games are very meticulously selecting the exact chords and melodies to accompany every environment, every situation. But for the content that you have rescored, and even for the original pieces
Yeah.
of music or soundtrack, how do you do that? Is that all like garage band? I know that you're a drummer, right? So I
Yep.
know that you create your own music that way. But how do you like create your own soundtracks? What is that process like?
I guess it kind of depends on the project because when I rescored the Baby Driver video, the coffee scene, it I did that with classmates. I was in Bob Halligan's music underscoring class senior year. That's another shout out to Bob Halligan. He's a really great songwriter and front man who wrote with a lot of famous people, including Judas Priest and Joan Jett. So it made sense that he was at Newhouse teaching music underscoring, and he would just the class was like 3.5 hours long, and he would just give us a film scene, and we would score the film scene. So he kind of helped us out in the first few classes, and then after that, we would take control. We would figure out how we wanted to score the cutscene, what instrumentation to use, what instruments we would use, would Erik be allowed on the drums or not, that kind of thing. And then we would literally write and compose and record a score for a 1, 2, or 3 minute scene in a film in just that one class. So Baby Driver specifically, I did with classmates. So a lot of the credit goes to them as well. Um, a lot of it's samples. I have a lot of kind of advanced sample libraries in Logic where I can compose orchestral scores with the East West orchestra samples. The Stylo video, Petri Monkeys, that's something that I technically scored.
Yeah, that was incredible.
Yeah, when you watch that, I composed the backing music, which is like a heavy grungy rock track, and then my teammate and I both did the sound design. So
Yeah,
for
that
that one, I kind of knew from the start with Petri Monkeys, that's what I called it.
right.
I knew that I wanted it to be like a very driving, powerful track. So I was like, it's obviously not going to be a piano ballad, and I thought of the idea of something kind of, I don't know, like grungy and raw and aggressive and a little bit garage band esque, and that's
Yep.
how I came up with the rock track. And then scene by scene, you watch the action unfold, and you write up a story that you feel goes well with the video because we were tasked with writing a completely new story for it with no context, and then
Wow.
based on that, I would just kind of measure by measure would figure out what the arrangement on the drums should be for each part of the scene. It's almost hard to explain. It's more like when you watch it, you can kind of get what I was going for.
So you performed the drum sections of that, or was that through Logic?
I performed, yeah, I performed them through Logic. There's other
Wow.
tracks. The Baby Driver scene, I performed that on drums, but with Petri Monkeys, I was kind of on a tight deadline, and I used Logic samples, but I performed it in Logic.
Wow. I just think it's so cool how, with those projects, you were able to combine your ability to play the drums with your passion for cinema and video games and fuse all of that with your multitude of digital media skills. And that's exactly what you do with SargeGames. But rather than creating content for academic purposes, you're doing it strictly and purely for yourself. And I've said this many times, but there is something truly liberating about doing something for you, for you. And
Yes.
the purpose is to have it resonate with other people, but at the core of it, it is to emanate out into the world the truest essence of your passion and of your character.
Yes.
and to hope that in doing so you help people, that you make them laugh, you make them smile.
Yeah, you gotta just be yourself because it's like the easiest way to do it. You don't want to be live on Twitch and be like, okay, what am I gonna say next? What am I gonna manufacture for the audience next? No, you just gotta be yourself, and then your audience will follow. Like they will find you, and the people who resonate with you, they'll be good viewers who will come to almost every stream. Or like I have viewers that I loved that would come to every stream and just chat with me.
It is a really incredible sensation when you find that community, or when they find you
Oh
and
yeah.
they keep watching you, they keep supporting you, not because you put on a mask or you have a facade, but because precisely because you stripped all that away. And you're
Yes.
you're not doing it for for corporate interest, or because you're being coerced by this person or that person, but you're doing it because you just fucking love it.
I genuinely loved it. Really, really loved it. If I could do that for a living, I would.
Oh, for sure, man. I am right there with you. But for a lot of people, I would say for pretty much everybody, it's getting started that's the hardest part. You have to have a lot of internal fortitude to overcome voices of doubt, insecurity, and the fear of being judged when going public with your creative content. So, my question to you is, what was your biggest fear when creating it, or did you have one?
Oh, I think a lot of streamers and content creators can agree that probably the most stressful part was worrying that what technical issues would occur. What would go wrong technically? I would go, will I go live and people won't be able to see my webcam? Will I go live and people won't be able to hear me? Like, and especially if I had a guest on or I played like an online game with several friends, I was like, oh my God, are the logistics going to work out? That was like probably my only fear in addition to I'm presenting myself for the first time in front of like just the public and random people on Twitch. Are people going to like me, or am I going to speak okay? Am I going to say something weird or on accident or something like that? But that all I kind of settled into it when I realized that in SargeGames I just wanted to be myself. I just wanted to be Sarge. If people liked that, they could join in and they could watch me. If they don't like that, they could move on and find the next streamer.
That strikes at the heart of what Unlimit Yourself seeks to convey, is this unabashed authenticity that can withstand the unenlightened and unsupportive judgments of others, and even use it as motivation to make yourself or your content even better. Because at the end of the day, your most central obligation is to live your own life, not somebody else's. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I believe that the vast majority of haters and detractors out there are only spewing negativity because they can't see themselves doing what you're doing. In other words, they do not have the guts to withstand public scrutiny. And because of that, they don't want to see you succeed. They don't want you to be a clear example that it can be done, that you can, in fact, survive the scrutiny and go on to make your own successful personal brand. So, to those listening, never forget that you are the strong one for putting yourself out there. Your ability to push on in the face of pushback is something that countless people are envious of and wish they could do themselves. So see it as a superpower rather than a shortfall, because that is exactly what it is. And on that note, Erik, my final question. Do you have any advice for up-and-comers who want to get into audio engineering, sound design, or content creation in general?
I guess my advice would be what a lot of other people gave me advice on, which is kind of just be you and do you. And like if you really want to do it, you should do it. And if you make a video and you think it's cheesy, or you're afraid other people are going to think it's cheesy, but you're a young creator and you're like, no, I'm really excited about this. I had a fun time doing this. Just create it and just put it out there. Or even if it doesn't really go out there and you just create it and like keep it in your vault or whatever, like just do it, because if you don't do it, then you're never going to have like that little piece of proof that you had this idea and you translated it and put it into a form of media that other people can like watch or listen to or engage with. So like the best thing you can do is really just when you have that urge to create something, just do it. Don't worry about the logistics too much. Don't worry about whether or not people like it. Just do it and put it out there.
Beautifully said. Doing something that feels right and feels true to you, there are few sensations in this life that are more liberating than that. And Erik, I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your story, your journey, and your passion.
I loved being on here. I was like, really, am I really worth talking about? But I definitely had a good time.
Oh, well, you're certainly worth talking about, and everybody who I bring on the show has a story worth sharing, a story that can inspire other people to break out of their comfort zone, defy the naysayers, and find peace with who they genuinely are and what they truly want to do in life. And I know it can be hard for anybody, especially somebody as humble and modest as you, to look at their story and think that it would have that level of impact, but Erik, rest assured, yours does, and I'm just so grateful that you came on the show to share it with the world.
Thank you, Ricky, and thank you for being, professional and thoughtful and thinking up of good, deep questions to ask me that like pertain to me, because that in itself is its own skill that I feel like I wouldn't be as good at as you are. You made this flow like a podcast. I don't know that I would be able to do the same thing. So kind of we all have our strengths.
Oh, well, thank you, Erik. I really appreciate the kind words. And, something else I would really appreciate is if our wonderful listeners would go and check out your impressive portfolio of work by heading over to your website, thesargeatlarge.com. That is all one word, all lowercase.com. And head over to his Twitch page, which is the exact same handle, the Sarge at Large. And then also don't forget to give him a follow on Instagram, where his handle, the exact same thing, the Sarge at Large, and you will find in his bio a link tree where you can find a directory to all Erik Sargent content and platforms. Once again, Erik, it has been an absolute honor, and I can't wait to talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Ricky. This was an honor for me as well.
That's it for this episode of Unlimit Yourself. Today, we talked about the unbridled influence of childhood passion, Erik's decision to become a digital media scholar, the development of his personal brand SargeGames, and advice on how to be confident in your own creativity. We also got a behind-the-scenes look at Erik's media production process. Whether you're an aspiring YouTuber, podcaster, Twitch streamer, or closeted creative, the legend of SargeGames is one that will inspire you to unsheath your talents and share them with the world. As always, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.